Harley-Davidson just made a move so tone-deaf, it's tearing the company apart from the inside out. Riders are dumping their bikes, dealerships are silent, even Congress is furious. But the worst part? They still don't think they did anything wrong. Watch through to the end because the final twist says it all. The moment Harley went woke. It started quietly, a few online posts, a sponsorship banner here, a press release there. But then came the screenshots, the receipts, and the damning videos. Harley-Davidson, once the proud symbol of raw American individualism, was caught actively supporting drag queen story hours, pushing diversity and inclusion quotas, and embedding ESG initiatives deep into its corporate culture. It wasn't just that Harley was being inclusive, it was that they were doing so in a way that mocked the very people who made the brand iconic. Working-class riders, veterans, and outlaws who never asked for corporate social lectures, just a good bike and the freedom to ride it. The internet exploded. Influencers, rider forums, and even former Harley execs began ringing alarm bells. One of the loudest voices came from conservative commentator Robbie Starbuck, who exposed layers of internal documentation showing Harley's full embrace of ESG ratings and progressive talking points. Within hours, the clip made its way across Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. Riders who had been loyal for decades were blindsided. This wasn't just some marketing team going rogue, this was a boardroom-level decision, a top-down rebranding of Harley-Davidson to fit a worldview totally disconnected from its base. Riders felt insulted. It was like Harley was trying to become the motorcycle version of Bud Light. And to many, that wasn't just a disappointment, it was a slap in the face. For years, riders had felt their voice didn't matter. But the Bud Light collapse changed that. The boycott wasn't just a protest, it was proof that the American consumer still had teeth. And now, with Harley going down the same path, those teeth were bared once again. And then came the rally that made the backlash real. If you're feeling what riders are feeling, drop a like and sound off in the comments. Harley's not listening, but we are. Empty tents at Sturgis. Sturgis has long been the holy ground of American motorcycle culture. Every August, riders from across the country make the pilgrimage to South Dakota, roaring into town on chrome-clad V-twins to celebrate freedom, rebellion, and the open road. For decades, Harley-Davidson was at the center of it all, but not this year. The Harley-Davidson tent at Sturgis was deserted. Photos and videos poured in from attendees, rows of unsold bikes sitting in silence, board staff checking their phones, and a haunting emptiness that echoed betrayal. Even Budweiser's tent, also caught in its own culture war fallout, had more foot traffic. It was as if Harley had become radioactive. Riders walked past the tent like it didn't even exist. There was no outrage at the booths, just quiet rejection. And that made it even more brutal. It wasn't just the product, it was the silence from Harley's corporate side that poured gas on the fire. Not a single post had gone up on Harley-Davidson's social media accounts in days. No rebuttal, no defense, no acknowledgement. Just digital lockdown. They knew they were getting crushed, and the longer they stayed quiet, the louder the boycott became. For many longtime riders, this was the final straw. The brand that once stood for rebellion and grit now felt like a boardroom puppet show for globalist investors. Even those still riding Harley bikes admitted they'd never buy another one. But the silence wasn't just at the rally, it was spreading back home. Save time, skip the guesswork. Our top riding gear picks are all in the description below. Union shirts, pink slips. In Menomonee Falls, Wisconsin, just outside Milwaukee, Harley-Davidson workers are staring at a future they never expected. Production jobs that once paid solid union wages are disappearing. The company claims it's a temporary shift, moving work to a Thai facility for model year 2025. But workers aren't buying it. Harley had promised years ago that its Thai plant was only for the Asian and European markets. That promise is now shattered. American-built bikes for American riders are being replaced by assembled in America stickers on bikes shipped halfway across the world. Local news reporters tried interviewing employees, but many refused to go on camera, afraid for their jobs. One union leader told reporters bluntly, "This is a kick in the teeth to the American worker." To those inside the plant, this isn't just a business move, it's a betrayal. These are the same workers who stood by Harley through the rough years, through buyouts and cutbacks, through good contracts and bad ones, and now they're being thanked with pink slips and press releases written in corporate PR speak. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers released a damning statement. Harley-Davidson has backtracked on its pledge to keep U.S. manufacturing strong. The company, once a symbol of American industrial strength, is now leaning on offshore labor and shareholder satisfaction. And the company's excuse? That just made it worse. Made in America, assembled in Asia. For decades, Harley-Davidson sold an idea. American steel, American grit, American pride. Even riders who could barely afford their bikes scraped together enough because they believed in what the brand stood for. Now, that illusion is collapsing. Harley's corporate line is that this move is temporary, a global manufacturing balance aimed at efficiency. But riders aren't stupid. They know what happens when a company temporarily moves production overseas. It doesn't come back. Just ask the 600 workers in Kansas City who lost their jobs in 2019 under similar circumstances. Even worse, the bikes made overseas are being shipped back and sold in the U.S. without a drop in price. So who benefits? Not the buyer, not the worker, only the shareholders. The timing couldn't be worse. Harley's DEI programs are under fire. Its core audience is in revolt, and now its most sacred promise, American-built motorcycles, is being openly violated. The phrase "Made in America" now rings hollow, replaced by vague phrasing like "assembled for U.S. markets" and "global platform optimization." In one stroke, Harley-Davidson managed to alienate the workers who built its bikes, the riders who bought them, and the culture that kept them alive through decades of economic storms. And all of it traces back to one man, the CEO who rewrote Harley's identity. The CEO who lost the road. Before most Harley riders even knew who Jochen Zeitz was, their world had already begun to shift. A German executive known for environmental activism, Zeitz wasn't just a corporate strategist, he was an ideologue. At his former company Puma, he made headlines by imposing sweeping sustainability reforms and championing globalist values. When he took over Harley-Davidson in the early 2020s, he brought that same vision, only this time to a brand built on freedom, rebellion, and Americana. Under Zeitz, Harley didn't just modernize, it transformed. DEI initiatives became public-facing priorities. ESG reports took center stage. The company's rhetoric shifted from freedom on two wheels to sustainable mobility solutions. It sounded like something from a Davos conference, not a biker bar. For millions of riders, the message was clear. This wasn't their Harley anymore. But perhaps the most jarring detail came from Zeitz himself. In an interview, he proudly declared that he was the Taliban of climate change, a phrase meant to convey unwavering environmental commitment, but one that landed like a bomb in Harley's blue-collar base. Veterans, truckers, and working-class riders didn't hear passion. They heard threat. Harley's leadership stopped speaking the language of its riders. The brand that once prided itself on loud pipes and unapologetic patriotism now prioritized electric prototypes and global equity initiatives. For a company born in a Milwaukee shed during the age of steel and smoke, this sudden leap into sanitized corporate climate crusading felt not just tone-deaf, it felt traitorous. But the damage wasn't just ideological, it was deeply personal. And what happened next exposed the emotional backbone Harley had taken for granted. Patching over the past. For decades, Harley-Davidson didn't just build motorcycles, it built identity. Club bikers, outlaws, and everyday rebels gave the brand life long before Wall Street paid attention. They rode through the AMF years when quality tanked. They inked Harley logos into their flesh when it was considered dangerous. They kept the company alive when no one else would. And yet, under new leadership, Harley began scrubbing that legacy away. In dealerships across the country, patch-wearing bikers reported being turned away. Some were asked to remove club insignia before entering showrooms. Others were told they weren't the target demographic anymore. The men and women who had spent years customizing bikes, showing loyalty and riding tens of thousands of miles, suddenly found themselves unwelcome. The company stopped partnering with events that catered to biker clubs. Marketing shifted to sleek urban riders and sanitized weekend warriors. The leather and grit that once defined the brand were replaced with polished helmets and pastel riding gear. Instead of honoring the people who had carried them through hard times, Harley seemed intent on pushing them out. The rejection cut deep. To be a club biker is to belong to something bigger than yourself. For many, the bike isn't just a machine, it's home, and Harley was the only home they ever knew. When the brand turned cold, it wasn't just a shift in advertising, it was a betrayal of brotherhood, a denial of blood, oil, and decades of loyalty. And what those bikers did next shocked the entire industry. Because while Harley turned its back on them, they turned their backs on Harley. The boycott rolls in. At first, Harley's executives brushed off the backlash. They assumed it was just online noise, a few angry posts, a few bad headlines, nothing a couple of PR statements couldn't smooth over. But what they didn't realize was that they'd awakened a movement, one with serious buying power and cultural weight. It started with a trickle. Riders quietly traded in their Harleys. Social media accounts encouraged people to stop visiting dealerships. Popular influencers, YouTubers, and veteran bikers began calling for a boycott. And this time, people listened. The anger wasn't performative, it was purposeful. Just like the Bud Light fiasco, this was about principle. Then came Sturgis. At the largest motorcycle rally in the United States, Harley's massive tent stood empty. Booths that once buzzed with life and anticipation now echoed with silence. Videos circulated online of sales reps standing alone, awkward and ignored. A company that once dominated the event had become a ghost in its own house. Meanwhile, other brands, especially Indian, were thriving. Harley's social media feeds went dark. Dealerships reported lower than expected turnout, inventory piled up, and inside boardrooms the panic started to set in. For the first time in decades, the Harley name wasn't just losing momentum, it was losing relevance. The boycott wasn't just real, it was working. And while Harley scrambled to hide, their oldest rival stepped into the light. Indian seizes the flag. As Harley alienated its base, Indian Motorcycle did the opposite. The brand leaned hard into patriotism, veteran outreach, and made-in-America imagery. Their bikes weren't just machines, they were rolling statements of national pride. The American flag was everywhere. Their social media overflowed with real riders, real tattoos, and real mileage. And riders noticed. Former Harley loyalists began posting photos of their new Scouts and Chiefs. Dealers reported rising trade-ins, Harley out, Indian in. Reviewers praised Indian's design consistency, engine strength, and rider-first ergonomics. And while Harley chased ESG scores and corporate media appearances, Indian sponsored military charities and community rides. But it wasn't just the bikes, it was the brand's posture. Indian made riders feel respected, valued, heard. Their leadership didn't condescend to bikers or apologize for American muscle. They embraced it, celebrated it, invited everyone from old-school outlaws to first-time female riders. It was Harley's playbook, rewritten for a generation tired of corporate posturing. And Indian didn't just beat Harley in style and branding, they matched them in performance. Their mid-size lineup crushed the Nightster and Sportster in almost every measurable category. More torque, better seating, more customization. And Indian's customer service? Riders called it night and day. What had once been unthinkable, a Harley rider switching brands, was now normal. In fact, it was a badge of rebellion all over again. Only this time the rebellion had a different logo. But Indian wasn't just beating Harley in PR, they were winning on the road too. And the fallout from that shift was about to hit even harder. The Nightster that nobody wanted. When Harley-Davidson unveiled the Nightster, it was supposed to be the company's bridge to a new generation of riders. A lighter, more modern entry point to Harley ownership, the bike was packed with new tech, a smaller Revolution Max engine and a redesigned frame. But instead of excitement, it sparked confusion, and in some corners, disgust. Longtime riders didn't recognize it. Gone were the forward controls, the muscular silhouette, and the signature V-twin growl that made the Sportster iconic. In its place stood something that looked unfinished. The mid-controls made taller riders feel cramped. The styling was awkward, a strange fusion of flat tracker, cafe racer, and cruiser that didn't commit to any one identity. The gas tank wasn't even a gas tank anymore, just a shell above a plastic airbox with the actual fuel cell hidden under the seat. Harley said it was innovative. Riders said it was soulless. For a bike aimed at younger riders, the price wasn't exactly beginner-friendly either. By the time you added essentials, passenger pegs, upgraded mirrors, proper lighting, you were knocking on the door of better bikes from Indian, Yamaha, and even Triumph. And for older riders hoping to downsize from heavier cruisers, the Nightster lacked the comfort, power, and swagger they'd come to expect. Most damning of all, it just didn't feel like a Harley. No bark, no muscle, no presence. What was once the everyman's Harley, the rugged, rebellious Sportster, had been replaced with a confused corporate clone. And when people don't want your new bikes, they start dumping the old ones. Loyalty traded for optics. For years, Harley-Davidson's strength wasn't just in its bikes, it was in its people. Veterans, club riders, small-town welders, retired cops, truckers, they weren't just customers. They were ambassadors. They flew the flag, wore the patch, and built their lives around the roar of that V-twin engine. In return, they asked for only one thing: don't forget who we are. But Harley did. In boardrooms and press releases, the company shifted its focus to global markets and emerging consumer segments. Their marketing campaigns began featuring tech entrepreneurs, lifestyle influencers, and clean-cut suburbanites sipping oat milk lattes next to electric prototypes. American flags were replaced with abstract icons. The tough, calloused hands that built the brand were nowhere to be found. Harley started designing motorcycles to impress journalists, not riders. They chased urban cool instead of rural grit, and in doing so they alienated the very people who had stood by them during the worst years, through AMF misfires, quality scandals, and economic downturns. The old riders didn't ask for perfection, they asked to be remembered. But they weren't. They were replaced. This wasn't evolution, it was exile. And when riders began showing up to dealerships only to feel unwanted, something broke. That generational loyalty, the kind you can't buy with advertising, turned into bitterness. Riders who once defended Harley online began warning others to stay away. The pride they used to feel turned to resentment. Harley didn't lose a market. They lost a tribe. But the next blow wasn't emotional. It was financial. Indian crushes the middleweight market. While Harley fumbled with the Nightster, Indian Motorcycle was quietly building a product lineup that didn't just challenge Harley's midsize dominance, it obliterated it. The Scout platform, once a niche offering, had grown into a 5-variant arsenal. The Scout Bobber, Scout Classic, Super Scout, Scout 101, and the base model. Each one tailored to different riding styles, budgets, and performance demands. The numbers didn't lie. Even the entry-level Scout produced over 100 horsepower. The premium 101 version pushed that number even higher. Riders got adjustable suspension, keyless ignition, ride modes, and modern ergonomics, all standard or upgradable. Meanwhile, Harley's Nightster felt like a compromise. A smaller engine, fewer customization options, and limited aesthetic appeal. Even the controls told a story. Indian stayed true to forward controls, offering relaxed comfort and familiar stance. Harley forced riders into cramped, awkward positions with mid-mount setups that alienated its taller, older fan base. And it wasn't just about specs. Indian offered something Harley forgot how to deliver: emotional value. The bikes looked tough. They sounded fierce. They honored tradition while feeling fresh. You could customize them, tour on them, or ride them raw off the line and still feel like you were riding a motorcycle that meant something. Reviewers praised Indian's consistency. Riders praised its soul. The result? Scout sales soared. Harley's midsize lineup stalled. The company that used to dominate the boulevard now looked like it didn't even belong on the block. And Harley's final lifeline? Even that was falling apart. The great sell-off. What began as an ideological backlash quickly turned into a market shock. As more riders abandoned Harley-Davidson emotionally and financially, used Harleys started flooding the resale market. Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, Cycle Trader, they all saw the same trend. Too many Harleys, not enough buyers. This wasn't a normal dip in demand, it was a signal flare. Owners, worried about tanking resale value, rushed to unload their bikes before the floor dropped out. Some took steep losses, others sat on listings for weeks, only to slash prices again. In cities like Nashville, Phoenix, and Orlando, it wasn't uncommon to see a near-new Softail or touring model listed at a third of its original price. And the ripple effects didn't stop at individual sellers. Dealerships began hesitating to accept trade-ins. Inventory ballooned. Financing offers tightened. Buyers who once saw Harley-Davidson as a dependable investment now viewed it as a risk, just like a used luxury car with no resale floor. This wasn't just a reputational issue, it was a collapsing value proposition. If riders couldn't trust that their Harley would hold its worth, why buy one at all? Every new model on the floor became a liability, and that's when Wall Street started to notice. Investor calls turned grim. Shareholder questions became sharper. Analysts revised forecasts downward. The motorcycle wasn't just losing popularity, it was losing economic viability. Harley's brand was bleeding on every front. Identity, community, loyalty, and now cold, hard resale value. And Wall Street? They were about to feel the pressure too. Capitol Hill starts asking questions. It took 600 lost jobs for Congress to notice, but now they're listening. For years, Harley-Davidson enjoyed a kind of political immunity. It was seen as an American institution, above the partisan brawls too iconic to criticize. But after a string of plant closures, layoffs, and global outsourcing, that silence finally cracked. It began with a letter. Signed by a coalition of motorcycle unions, veteran advocacy groups, and conservative think tanks, the letter demanded a federal investigation into Harley-Davidson's use of taxpayer subsidies despite exporting jobs overseas. The number was staggering. Over $100 million in incentives, tax breaks, and relief programs had flowed into Harley's pockets over the past decade. Passés mobilized. Conservative lawmakers accused Harley of betraying its roots. Even traditionally moderate senators began asking why an American legend was quietly gutting small towns while launching new production in Thailand and Brazil. Behind closed doors, aides prepared hearing schedules. By the time the first round of subpoenas hit, Harley's executive team knew they had lost control of the narrative. Televised hearings soon followed. Clips of angry senators grilling Harley's corporate reps went viral. One congressman from Pennsylvania slammed a copy of Harley's ESG report on the table and said, "You took the money, you took the trust, and then you took the jobs." The backlash wasn't just from the right. Progressive lawmakers criticized Harley for chasing performative equity while laying off American workers and undermining labor protections. For the first time in living memory, Harley-Davidson was taking fire from both sides of the aisle. And while the hearings rage, the factories sit empty. But the real damage wasn't just in Washington, it was in the forgotten places Harley left behind. The towns Harley left behind. The company left. But the silence in town is deafening. In York, Pennsylvania, the local diner that used to serve first-shift Harley workers shut down after 97 years in business. In Menomonee Falls, Wisconsin, the last union meeting was held in a firehouse where members wept into their coffee. And in Kansas City, a parts supplier that had worked with Harley for over 3 decades padlocked its doors. Its final shipment marked return to sender. These weren't just factory towns, they were Harley towns. The The ripple effect of every closed plant hit harder than anyone in corporate predicted. Barbershops, hardware stores, motels, churches, every small business within 10 miles of a shuttered plant saw revenue dry up. The economic bloodline that had kept these communities alive was severed, and there was no plan to reconnect it. And the people? They weren't angry. They were hollowed out, because Harley-Davidson wasn't just a job. It was pride. It was Friday night rideouts, community parades, charity poker runs, and 4th of July roars down Main Street. It was identity woven into the very layout of the town. When the bikes stopped rolling out of the factory, something else stopped too. Belief. Belief that American companies would stand by the communities that built them. Belief that tradition mattered more than market share. Belief that loyalty went both ways. In one Iowa town, a mural of a Harley rider once stood proudly on the side of a local high school gym. It's been painted over. The new mural is a cornfield, and Harley's global expansion. That was the final insult. Because while American towns were left to rot, Harley was cutting ribbons overseas. The brand without a country. They still fly the flag, but they don't speak the language anymore. Once upon a time, Harley-Davidson was America. It was the steel-tipped spirit of rebellion, liberty, and grit. But in its quest to go global, the brand didn't just expand, it severed the cord that connected it to the very soul of its country. Today, Harley's operations stretch from Brazil to India to Thailand. Its corporate materials are filled with sustainability reports, carbon reduction metrics, and DEI metrics that read like United Nations playbooks. On paper, it looks modern. In spirit, it feels empty, and riders know it. The bikes are still painted red, white, and blue, but they no longer carry the weight of that flag. Because for many Americans, Harley's image now feels performative. It waves patriotism like a costume, not a creed. The moment the brand stopped prioritizing American workers, American culture, and American families, it lost something it may never get back. Harley says its vision is global relevance. But for riders on Route 66 or in the Ozarks, that translates to one thing: betrayal. You can't outsource pride, you can't outsource brotherhood, you can't build an American legacy from a Bangkok assembly line. The irony is devastating. In trying to appeal to the whole world, Harley lost the one market that loved it without question. It used to be a symbol. Now it's just a trademark. Even their ads look like they're selling insurance. And as the dust settles, one truth becomes clear. This isn't just a brand crisis, it's a cultural mutiny. If you're tired of the corporate spin and want the truth raw, hit subscribe. This is the side of the story they won't show you. The Great American Motorcycle Revolt. This isn't just about bikes anymore. It's about who owns the future of American freedom. Across the country, a strange thing is happening. Independent repair shops are turning into rally points. Old bikers are mentoring younger ones, not to keep them in the Harley family, but to teach them how to survive without it. Veterans are refusing to buy new. Patriots are stitching over their Harley patches with custom logos that say things like "Made in Heartland" or "Rider before brand." There's a quiet revolution underway, and it's growing louder. The consumer isn't just mad, he's done. Done being talked down to, done being replaced, done being ignored. The Harley-Davidson name used to be a unifier. Now, it's a punchline. The very riders who used to build shrines to their bikes are now building a movement to take motorcycling back. Some are switching to Indian, others are rebuilding vintage bikes. A few are even creating micro-brands, assembling parts, sharing tips, selling direct. It's not just about horsepower anymore. It's about meaning, it's about community, it's about control. This revolt isn't organized, but it doesn't have to be, because the emotion driving it is stronger than any marketing campaign. Pride. Harley may have lost the road, but not every brand has. While they chase optics and offshore profits, there's a new class of bikes quietly taking over, built simple, priced right, and made for real riders. If you're ready to see what those machines look like, the next video is waiting. And if you got something out of this one, do us a favor. Like, drop a comment, and subscribe. This fight's not over.